Okay, we're going to jump right in. Good morning. Happy Saturday, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. If you've been following Pipelines, the CSUEA, you know that we do lots of these panels where we bring industry leaders together to have very necessary conversation about career tips, how you can break into this industry, and just to drop all the gems and nuggets. So happy Saturday, first and foremost. I'm Shari. I am Director of Operations of Pipelines. We are a mobile app that connects underrepresented talent directly to jobs and training across tech, entertainment, and creative. You can check out our website at www.pipelines.pro. And like I said before, we partner with the CSUEA as one of our favorite partners on panels like these quite often. So I'll let Haley talk a little bit about the CSUEA.
Hi, y'all. Thanks so much for being here today. I know it's Saturday. I know everybody's got things to do, and we're so happy to have you. I'm happy to have these guest panelists who are amazing folks in their fields that you get to learn from. Thank you all for being here and for your time on doing this. CSUEA is an organization that is meant to help you, to give you resources, to give you opportunities like this and so many more. So make sure you check out our website, which I will pop in the chat in a minute here. They're open to all, of course, geared towards CSU students, but feel free to check out. There's so many resources, so many opportunities, and it's all there just waiting for you. So I will pop the website and my email in case anybody has any questions later.
Thank you, Haley. And today I'm actually very excited for this conversation, not only because we have three incredible women from the post-production world, but as you know, in California, we hear so much about film, TV, production, which are all great fields. We don't talk enough about post, and post is such an incredible industry that has so many career paths, and so many people don't even know about all of the opportunities that exist in post-production. So today, we just want to really dive into the conversation and talk about what post-production management is versus editorial, how you can break in, what you should be doing to prepare for a career in post. And you have three experts who are incredible, who are going to talk to you today. So before we jump into the conversation, I would like them to introduce themselves, just your name, your role, and your company, no particular order, so we know who we're talking to today.
I'll let Sarene go first.
Hi, I'm Sarene. I'm a post supervisor. I work freelance for different production companies.
Hi, I'm Brittany Irving. I'm the manager of post at Moderator Studio. It's a production company and studio hybrid.
Hey guys, my name's Lauren. I am a visual effects coordinator, and I also work closely with Brittany at Moderator Studios on a TV show. I don't know if I'm allowed to say what it is though, Brittany, am I?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, on the morning show. So that's out season 3.
And Serene's also on a Moderator show, so I'll let her.
Yes, I'm also on a show for Moderator called I'm a Virgo. So we've been doing that.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so let's kick this off. So first and foremost, just so we can set the tone and understand what the difference between all various aspects of post, what is the difference between post-production management and post-production editorial? It's the popcorn order, anyone can answer.
Yeah, so I guess if you want to start with like post-production editorial, I guess maybe Sarene, yeah, you might be better at like describing that, and then I can.
Yeah, so the way I look at it is post-production management is basically you're like the liaison for everyone in every way, shape, and form in terms of files, in terms of just communicating, like you are the hub. And then editorial is all the cutting, all the footage, all the content. And in the management part, your job is to take that content and get it to where it needs to go. So you have like turnovers and tell your vendors and all that. So that's like a big part of our job.
Yeah, and I guess from my purview on the post management side of things, just for where I sit on the production company studio level. So if you want to look at it this way, Sarene is like boots on the ground, working closely with like the directors and the EPs and the editors, and pushing the content through the pipeline. And I honestly, like when I sum it up for people, we just manage like the budget and the schedule just to make sure that when the project is done, that we remain within budget and stay on schedule as much as we can. And if we don't, just helping the team find creative solutions to get there. So because of that, we're able to manage multiple projects at the time. where people like Lauren and Serene, really, they work on one project at a time and they're dedicated to that one show that they're working on.
You know, and this next question, I do want each of you to answer because I do think it's important. The number one question I always get, or I know all of you are just burning to know, people want to know like how you got there, because I think it's important to emphasize that everyone's path is different. Like in this industry is not one set formula. Like everybody has, oh my God, like my story is just all over the place. And so I do think it's important just to share your story. Like what was your first job? Your first real job? And then how did you get here? Like what was your journey from, you know, if you did graduate college, from college till now, like how did you get there? How'd you get here, I should say?
I'll go first. So I had a psych degree and wanted to get into film and thought it'd be good to go into casting. So I worked for someone for free for like 2 years. And then I just was like really kind of, I don't know, I didn't feel like I could really move forward from there. So I took a trip where I walked like 500 miles. And so I came back from that trip and I interviewed with this woman, and she hired me because I did that walk. And it was on a show called The Last Ship for TNT. So yeah, that's how I got in here.
I'll go second. My path was kind of, I guess you can say, zigzaggy on the way up. I graduated CSUN, Cal State University Northridge, with a focus in post with TV production. And I went into accounting because I had a friend that knew someone, and I actually kind of liked it. It was television accounting, and I kind of ended up moving up within, even though I loved post. And I thought, hey, this might be my calling, and realized how much more complex it got. And I realized I'm not really a numbers gal. And every kind of production I was on, I made friends and colleagues with people in post. And finally, I was on the show The Orville, and I met Brittany and also the visual effects teams over there. And they were like, hey, we need a PA in visual effects. And it's kind of taboo to jump on the same show from one department to another, but I knew my passion and I thought, hey, like I'll try it out. Visual effects is definitely post, but it's a little different than your regular cut and paste kind of post. So I tried it out, and I really love the creative aspect of it. You get to make things, and I've been there ever since. And I moved up the ranks and became a coordinator within the team. And now I've been doing coordinating ever since, and I love it. And that's kind of been my journey.
Yeah, and then so for me, like Lauren, I was kind of zigzaggy. I went to University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, so not California State alumni. I'm from North Carolina. And there was an internship program through our communication studies department called the Hollywood Media Internship, where like 200 kids that are in the film school, if you want to call it that, apply for an internship in California. So you have to, hopefully get like scholarships where you move out to California just to work these internships for 3 months. And hopefully you network enough to get a job and stay. So I got an internship with Scott Free Productions doing non-scripted, because I originally thought I was going to end up in development. I did my first coverage and realized that I don't want to be in development. And then I was like, oh, I'll try editing. I did that in college. So I made friends with a guy who was an assistant editor on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, who connected me with a friend of his that hired me as his post PA, having never worked in TV or post ever. And I sat in with the AE one day and, kid you not, fell asleep. So decided that like that was not my path. And I have deep respect for people who do editorial. But my supervisor at the time, I had to chauffeur him around because he didn't have a car. So what that meant was I had to go to like mix sessions with him and color reviews because I had to wait for him to take him home. And that ended up being like a blessing in disguise, because that's really where I fell in love with the whole post process. And that's kind of where I learned that there is more to post and editorial than just editing and it being delivered to the network. there's like a whole world with the mix and the color and the music, and then the process of like kind of being at the level where Serene is and just seeing all of that getting merged together with all the creatives. And that's kind of like where I fell in love with it. So I stayed as a post PA. I did that for 2 years, then moved up to a coordinator on a show called Pitch on Fox. And then I did Grownish for Freeform. And then after Grownish, and I did Barry, and then decided that like, I wanted to take a little break because I just went from show to show and got overwhelmed. So I tried advertising for 1.5 years, didn't like it, came running right back to TV, worked on the Orville, which is where I met Lauren. The pandemic hit, and, you know, for a lot of people, that's kind of where I just started reevaluating like my path and realized that I was passionate about being in a position where I could maybe help get more women and people of color and diverse hires like hired onto these big shows like Virgo, like Serene's working on, and Morning Show, like Lauren's working on. And that's really just like a passion of mine, just being at the company that I'm at now, is being able to meet with a bunch of different people, figuring out what they're passionate about, and hopefully like putting them on shows that they normally wouldn't be exposed to. So part of the reason why is because when I started talking to people on the studio level, there were very few women and there were very few people of color. And they are, you know, they have a big hand in working with EPs on getting people hired. So that's like my secret as to why I'm on the studio level. And it's been super fun just being able to meet a bunch of different people, like Susie, which is how I got connected to this program here. So that is my long, long response to how I got here.
No, that's great. I want to reemphasize that, you know, as you're thinking about what you want your next step in your career to be, there's no right or wrong way to get into post or to start your career. Like, your journey only belongs to you, and that path looks very unique. Like, if you ask a panel of 10 people in post, you'll get 10 different stories and responses of how they all came here, like, no lie. So I'm so glad that you guys shared your story. And that's a perfect segue to my next question, my earlier point. I think a lot of people, like when I first moved to LA, I had no idea post was even a thing, let alone what roles or responsibilities were involved in the post-production process. So could we talk a little bit about the post-production track in Hollywood and what kinds of roles are involved? I know, Brittany, you mentioned like color, editing, VFX, but for those who may not know what those terms mean or know what careers are involved, and I know it's very broad, but if you could talk a little bit about maybe entry and mid for the sake of this conversation, like if someone wanted to break into post, what kinds of roles should they be aware of, or what kind of roles exist in this world so they're aware?
And just so I understand, these are all college students, like current college students, correct?
Mostly, I think we might have some grads too, but mostly college students, yes.
Okay. I know what a lot of studios are doing. Our company does it, is we now offer like post internships to work with the post teams. I think for the most part, there are a lot of studios that only offer like development and maybe production. But if you're still in college, I definitely would seek out studios that offer post internships, because I feel like without having to commit to a job, that's probably the best way to go in and learn like from the ground up, so to speak, and just kind of understand the inner workings of it. And then, I mean, I could talk about that on a post executive track, but I think maybe we should start with like on the show first, like entry and mid.
That's fine.
Mhm.
I think like speaking to what Brittany just said, yeah, like doing an internship or just, I mean, coming in as a post PA was the best thing I did, because it allowed me to kind of just feel everything out, see like what I actually like to do. And the best thing about being a PA is you can't ever do anything wrong, because you're doing what people are telling you to do. So you're never going to mess up. It is long hours. And if you're in post, like, and you want to be in post, you will get hired so much faster if they just know that. Because producers just love that there's someone who actually wants to be in post. They want to nurture that person. But yeah, I don't know, like sometimes it can be luck, but if you do an internship and go that route, like that's probably more structured. So I would do that too. I agree with Brittany.
Yeah, the like post PAs, they do a lot of like you get lunch. If you're working late, you get dinner. they process paperwork, and it's kind of like exactly like Sarene said, they're the catch-all for anyone that runs through editorial, as far as like getting office supplies. Maybe you're renting hard drives somewhere. The one cool thing that I remember about being a post PA is like on the show, people like Serene's a post supervisor, which is like the third level up within a post team. Specifically, you have the post PA coordinator, and then supervisor, and then post producer. Once you hit like the coordinator level, you're kind of in the office all the time. And the post PA, they're running around and meeting, like they actually get to meet the people at the studio and the network that you talk to on the phone. So a lot of people kind of look at the post PA as like, oh, they're the assistant. But if you think about it, there's a very unique opportunity. You get to meet more people than your team who's higher up than you. So it's like, you know, as a PA, you kind of just make the experience like what you make it. And I think if you make it well, you get an opportunity to meet like a lot of people. And as a jumping off point to talk about the different departments, and it kind of feeds into Lauren, with post, they work with, you know, you have your post crew and then the editors. And then beyond that, you get to work with like the sound mixers. They're the ones who mix all the sound together on the show. Composers and music supervisors. Like if you're interested in music, you have a very unique opportunity to be talking to these people. So there's a segue and opportunity to go there. And then you have, I'm going to talk about like post video. That's the people who do like the coloring and all that stuff on the show, who pump out your deliverables. If you're really into like technology and codecs and file sizes, I'm not. That's why I described it very bare. There's an opportunity to learn that and go vendor side. And then there's also a whole visual effects team that I kind of want Lauren to speak to, because they talk about post, but really VFX isn't like a section of post. It's like its own separate thing with this whole world. And that's why I asked Lauren to join, because I think she could offer like a lot of insight into like just a different world that sits like alongside of post and editorial.
Yeah, and that being said, visual effects is definitely a different world indeed. If you think about it, like you're creating things, you're making things real. Like on the Orville, we made outer space real. We made all these sorts of different monsters real. I mean, there's the typical like blemish fixes and, you know, wardrobe fixes, but we kind of make it all pristine and clean. So when it's delivered and ready to go, like it's perfect. And also, you know, like going into PA stuff, because that's what I did for a little while before jumping on to being a coordinator. I was actually very fortunate too, because PAs, you know, you do the basic stuff. Like I remember enjoying going shopping and grocery shopping for my team, and you do the lunch runs and all that fun stuff. But I was actually pretty fortunate to learn the software. They really just kind of threw me in the water, and they're like, hey, so you got to learn this, you got to learn that. We have this kind of workflow where we go through shots and we upload them to a system, and then we go through it together and we review and we see stuff, and we're like, hey, like, for example, the Orville, like this alien's supposed to be green, it's not supposed to be blue, like let's send it back. And then the vendor who is working on that shot will take a look at it. They'll see the notes that I send out with that shot, and they'll say, okay, let's make the alien that color. They send it back, and then we re-review that and we look at it and we're like, okay, this is good. And we send it for final pending quality control, which is something that I guess you'll dive into once you see the real all world of post-production, but that's kind of just the final product before it goes to TV, and it needs all the final approvals. But I was very fortunate to kind of be very, very involved with post and visual effects. And, you know, you note take, you download and upload deliveries. I did a lot of notes for script updates, and I kept tasks in line, and I maintained the latest schedule, the post grid, the one-liner. It's a lot of fun. Like it's a different world. You do get to kind of create things from the ground up. You get to look at like stuff like windows and get to put in different backgrounds. It's just a totally cool, creative position, and I'm very fortunate to be where I am right now. So, yeah.
I also just want to add something about post real quick. No one ever tells you this, but out of all the departments in TV, post and VFX and color, sound, all that, we're the only ones to see the content before it airs. Like no one talks about that enough. And I feel like that's my favorite part of it is, like when you're writing the episode, you get to write it, but like, you don't really get to, as a writer, you don't get to see it half the time until it's aired or maybe it's final. And it's cool. Like we get to see something as early as director's cuts where there's no visual effects in it, no sound work, no music, and you really get to watch it get built. That's hands down, like without a doubt, like my favorite part of being in post, and no one talks about that enough.
And I'll also add too, there's producers on the post side as well. A lot of people think producers only exist in production, but post-production producer is a thing, like post-producer, or an AP, associate producer, or post-production coordinator. So those same roles also exist in the post world too. So it's also another way to get into the industry of post if you are not color or editing or VFX. Producing is really project management. That's really what it is. You're managing an entire project from beginning to end on the post end. So I just want to throw that out there too, because the whole goal of this conversation also is that you leave more aware of what's possible in this world. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So I do want to switch gears and talk a little bit about skills, because I'm just thinking in the mind of somebody that, may not know a lot about this world and how to break into it. And so from that point, are there certain specific skills that one needs to have to break into post, or are there transferable skills? As let's say a lot of people on this call may not have worked in post before. What skills do you find valuable in this world that are necessary for them to have or to be mastering if they want to enter this world of post?
That's a good question.
Well, if you wanted to be like on the management side, I would just say to be very detail oriented, like also in Lauren's job, like as a VFX coordinator, because I used to be a VFX coordinator, and just tracking everything, all the information, all the notes is so important. It's very tedious, but I mean, I can do Excel spreadsheets for days of just tracking and doing schedules. And like Lauren was saying, so that is just something, like if you have the patience for that, that's definitely a skill. But yeah, that's very important in this job.
Patience, that's spot on. That's why I said it was a good question, because I don't know if I would call it skills more than I would call it just having patience. Stress management is also important. You don't have to be a master of it, but you should expect to develop it at some point. It's mainly because you're juggling different parts of post, different parts of the process. And if you work in TV, say there's 10 steps in a process, that's multiplied by how many episodes you're working on. It's not just like one project. I would say organization, email etiquette, because I feel like in post you email a lot. And a lot of times, if you want to go into more creative path and you want to figure out a way to make it fun, I think you should definitely have an eye for TV for sure. Because part of being in the post team, like for example, like Sarene and her team pumped out a cut last night, and they have to like watch it and QC it and make sure it looks good before it goes out to like the studio and the network. So having an eye for what you're looking at, to know like, hey, like this color's off, or there should be music here and there's not. So it's like having that attention to detail too. And I think overall just a passion for TV. And as you're starting out, maybe not even a passion for post, but definitely a passion for TV for sure.
And I totally agree with all that, as well as being detail oriented, because people really want to know the specifics, whether you're talking to the studio in general, or if you're talking to vendors specifically. You got to be very detailed about what you're asking for and what you want, because they say time is money and people are working, and if things don't work out the way that you wanted it to, like for instance, when we're going back and forth about shots and wanting something to be a certain way, like that's money that is lost on a shot that it was not when you give the wrong information for it, it comes back the wrong way, then you have to go back and you have to give them the actual real details of what you really want. So you have to be detail oriented. And the other thing too, I'd say, is don't feel afraid to ever ask questions. We're here to help you learn, and we want to make sure you thrive and you get where you want to be. So that's also something you want to do.
Thank you. And I'm going to add, be proactive, because I say this every single panel I do. Haley knows this. But you have to, this industry is not a reactive industry. You have to get out there, network, open your mouth, ask questions, stay curious, be uncomfortable, all the things, because closed mouths don't get fed. And if you follow me, you know, I say that all the time. But thank you. That's a great insight. And I know each of your roles respectively differ. And that's why I love the diversity of this panel. But can we talk about, in your specific role, what a regular workday looks like for you, and who are you working with, like in the post world? Like, who are your main people that you're working with on a daily basis, and what does your workload or your workday typically look like?
So, I'll go first, because my day consists of bugging Sarene like 20 times a day and maybe bugging Lauren like 10 times a day. But I guess within the company, I'm interacting a lot with, like, from the ground up BA, like business affairs and legal. Starting with them, they close our deals, like to hire people like Sarene and Lauren, and make sure that they're paid appropriately and all that stuff. And then working with the creative team, they write the scripts. And our company specifically, they're more than just creative execs that manage the creative budget. They're also producers on all of our projects. So we're kind of their exclusive post team, which is a nuanced form. But so we interact with them a lot. And then obviously our production team in the company. But I guess from a managerial standpoint, because we don't have a VFX department, we're like post and VFX execs. So really just like checking in with Sarene and her boss on, cut statuses, like, is something going out? If not, like, we have to know that information so we can plan in-house, like what the conversations are. Lauren specifically, the spot that they're on with the morning show is they're putting together bids for each episode, just so we know how much VFX is going to cost. So checking in with her and her boss about, like, hey, what's the budget for this episode? Are we within budget? Do we need to talk to creative to scale back on some things? So, like, I guess just where I am, like my position in our company, it really always just comes down to budget and schedule and process to make sure that all those things are kind of just working in tandem and moving along. But if I dwindled it down, it definitely is bugging Sarene and Lauren and other people in departments multiple times a day.
But it's good that you bug us, because it keeps us like going. And
I enjoy talking to Lauren and Sarene. Like, they're great people to know too. So half of our conversation is just like having random conversations.
Yeah, it's true. And venting a lot, because there's so many struggles.
Yes.
But yeah, like speaking to what Brittany said, I get calls from her all the time, or texts or Slacks. And then we basically are just trying to keep to our schedule. So like yesterday we got like 2 of our episodes locked, which was great. It was like a pleasant surprise. We were very excited, but like we didn't expect it. And I think a lot of posts, you kind of walk into your day not thinking you're going to do one thing, and then you walk out of it doing none of what you thought you were going to do and doing something completely different. But just, setting up spots, like with like Lauren would know, just doing like a VFX spot, coordinating, sending files. We use like a program called Pix that we set people up on, and we send those specific people files. And then just balancing like the studio and the creative. And that's like basically like a big part of my job, is just, getting what the creative wants and balancing that between what the studio wants and then what the network wants, because our show is a co-venture. So that's very complicated and it is stressful, but a lot of my job is basically just the politics of it, and like how you respond correctly and do things like, you should never do anything too quickly. You should always just pause and take a beat before you act in this job, because there have been times where like I will be told to do something and then in 10 minutes later it's already done in a different way and it's already solved. So never like act too quickly with any requests you get. Like I have a 10-minute rule to do that. But yeah, it's just basically balancing all that and just getting everyone all the information that they need.
And also the cool thing about like Serene's position as a post supervisor, that's cool, is she gets a lot of face time with the directors and EPs. Because like directors come in to work on like their cut, and EPs are there at that point, like every day, like sitting in the room with the editors. Well, also on that, like I wish like if we had an editor on here, they do get a lot of time like sitting with the EPs in the room. So a large part of like even coming in as a post PA and post coordinator, if you get starstruck, you got to get over that real quick, because like you're in the room with some very important people that you wouldn't think you would be. And talking to them every day, like on the phone, on email and stuff like that, because you're basically helping them through the process as well. Like you have to be here. This is the address, you know, these are the shots we're looking at, stuff like that. So Sarene and Lauren have a lot of face time with the creatives on a day-to-day basis.
And I guess also too, sorry, Shari.
No, go ahead.
Just like talking about day-to-day basis right now too, for me, right now we're kind of still kicking things off on the show, still starting it up, but it's about to get crazy. We're still setting up workflow, and we work kind of closely and watch over the shoulder with post to see what is needed visual effects wise of us, because a lot of the time, if we can help it and jump ahead and kind of know what we're looking at and what we're looking for, so we can kind of budget correctly, we can just kind of peek over the shoulders and say, oh, okay, like they have monitor shots. Okay, we're going to need to budget in for that. And then, you know, like Brittany was saying earlier, right now we're setting up bids for each episode, and we're choosing and awarding the vendors that we will be having work on our shots for the season. And currently right now we're like in the process of interviewing and hiring artists and editors. And with all of that, managing meetings, running the calendar, making sure we have the right software. It's the calm before the storm, believe it or not. So once we kind of get up and running, it's gonna get a lot more work heavy. It's gonna get a lot more of work heavy, and we're just gonna have to hit the ground running. So.
Thank you. And, you know, and if you want to, I was just add to that, if you want to learn more about a specific company, I know it goes without saying, but you'll be surprised how many people don't do it. But websites are your best friends. Go to the websites, look at their work, look at their team, see who's doing what, who are they working with? You know, every post house is different. They have a different vibe, a different culture, different clients. So I would just recommend, if this is something you're serious about, to do the work and be intentional and check out the websites and learn more about the companies and what they're doing, because it really is a really cool industry and field that not a lot of people know about. So I would be remiss without bringing this up, because if you don't know, where have you been? But you know, we have a diversity issue in this industry, and it's still very much white male dominated in 2022. And that's just a fact, regardless of how we feel about it. And so I do want to talk about what barriers that you found for women and people of color to break into post. And once we identify those barriers, what do you suggest? How do you overcome them? Because it's a fact, regardless of how we feel about it.
I don't know if anyone's seen the movie God's Country yet. I just saw it this past weekend, and there was a part, well, the whole story is just about this woman of color, Tandy Wade Newton plays this person, and she's in, I think it's like Minnesota or something like that. And there's a few scenes where they talk about just like bringing diversity to the table. And then they ended up at the end of it, just hiring someone who's a friend, right? And that's kind of like the rooms that I find and found myself in often, as far as just like, oh yeah, I know this one guy, or I know this one person, as opposed to going through the process and putting together a grid with everyone and making sure the grid is diverse and you're picking from that diverse bucket. as opposed to just going with the person that they think is reliable. So that's something I definitely try to do in hiring and looking at the team holistically. And I feel like if we're talking about barriers, I think it's just when you're working with a team and other people are making the decision, getting them to buy into your vision of like, hey, we're going to do the morning show, just making sure that you have editors working on episodes that represent the story that they're trying to tell, which gladly I can say we're doing that for season 3. But you know, there's that part of it too, and just making sure that like there's women on the team, and that when you look at it, that everybody kind of just looks different. I think that's probably the hardest part, is just getting other people to buy into that vision and understand it.
Thank you, Brittany. Appreciate that. So I'm assuming, like I said earlier, most of the people on the call are recent grads or graduates or students. So if they're here and they're listening to the conversation, I always want to make sure that these conversations have action items attached, or they're actionable. So what would you say they could be actively doing right now to prepare for a career in post? And this could be initiatives that should be plugging into, people that should be talking to, resources. I want to make sure that they walk away with something that that will be applicable to their pursuits right now. So if you have like job boards or initiatives or just general tips and advice of how could they could be preparing actively and efficiently for a career in post, that would be super helpful. All the gems and nuggets are welcome, because we want them to leave feeling empowered and inspired. So if you have any general advice or tips or job boards, resources, initiatives, you want to drop it in the chat, that's fine too. But I want to make sure that when they leave this call today, that they know a little bit more than they did before about how to actively and efficiently prepare for a career in post. I know that was very long-winded, so I hope you got that.
If there's anyone like that wants to become an editor, you're going to start as an AE, right? So my PA, he's been with me for like 4 years. He's wanted to be an assistant editor. And so he got in pretty easily by going through the local 700 website. So that's the union for editorial. And so I definitely recommend going through that, like getting your hours. So I would find like a non-union project, or, you know, trailer houses, like where they cut trailers. Those are great places to get hours. And just rack them up, then you can apply to get into the union, and then you're in and you're set. Also, like working for a union show, like if you're on a non-union show that turns union, or just building your resume like that could definitely, like, that's the way to go. But yeah, just like doing non-union stuff first will get you there. So definitely like start working on projects. If you're cutting, build a reel. Like that's super impressive. So, and people look at that stuff, like they really do. And it goes a long way. So definitely do that. Your like student projects and stuff like that too. Those are like awesome. That people love it.
I'd already say like everyone who showed up here on a Saturday morning is already halfway there. Doing events like this where you get to meet and talk to people that you don't interact with on a daily basis. But beyond that, just taking the extra step, like to reaching out after the fact. If, you know, Lauren says something or Sarene says something that's interesting to you, you know, reaching out to say like, hey, thank you. It like really starts with the outreach. I tell my current assistant that now. I did something very similar to this, and she was one out of like 30 people who attended who emailed to thank me. And so when we were looking for interns, she immediately was my first thought that I reached out to and hired her as an intern. And now she's our assistant. So I would say like you're halfway there, like by attending this, and just be, you know, just making sure that people just remember who you are, and then that you stand out, and that you have, like Shari said it earlier, just having a genuine curiosity, like gets you halfway there. But if we're talking about concrete resources, Facebook groups are really good. There's a bunch where I need a post PA. That one's not a secret group, so you could find it. But there's like 5 or 6 of them on Facebook. Even if you don't use Facebook, sign up for it just to get in those groups. They are posting all the time. Like I pull contacts from there to add to our grid all the time. So I definitely would check that out. And something I encourage every assistant that works for me is, say you watch a show like House of Dragon or Morning Show, or I'm a Virgo, like, don't just let it stop at like, oh, I watched a show and that was great. Like, go on IMDb and see who worked on that show, and see if you can find their contact information and reach out and say, hey, I watched the show. It was really great. I'm interested in posts. Do you have time to talk to me? Because a lot of people think you should only network when you need something. But honestly, the best networking is just like letting people know you love their work, and that, you know, if there's ever an opportunity, just like, you know, remember my name, or if there's anyone else I can talk to. Because I think that goes a lot further than like calling someone and saying, hey, you know, what can you do for me? I think people remember you more when you're like genuinely curious and wanting to know what they want to do.
And plus too, I'll add, you know, apply. If there's a door open and it's not a necessary, like, desired path. Like for me, I jumped in at accounting and I just kind of made my rounds and talked to whoever. You never know who you're going to meet on a show. You never know the connections you're going to make. So just, you know, put yourself out there, try different things, and you might get to the path that you really want to be in. So
I just want to add to Lauren, to your point, like, Lauren was a payroll accountant when I met her, like, not even connected to post at all. But like, a lot of people think you got to work hard when you're in that role. And Lauren worked so hard as a payroll accountant, so that when she wanted to go into post and VFX, it was a no-brainer for that team. So like, even if you're not in the position that you want to be in, like, still kill it anyway, because people see it. And yeah, I had to shout you out, Lauren, because you were a really
thanks, Brittany.
accountant.
No, you both read my mind, because literally I was that was going to be my last question, but it's not anymore. Just kidding. My actual last question is about networking, because it is so important in this industry. I cannot stress that enough. And I've talked to people, I don't like networking. And the truth of the matter is, like, it's not about you liking it or not. It's necessary. You have to do it if you want. Like, it's like I said, it's a proactive industry, and networking looks a lot of different ways. I do want to talk about that, because I think people think networking is just walking up to people at a mixer and shaking their hand and asking them for a job. And that, I mean, that's not at all it. And so I want to talk about leveraging things like social media. And or LinkedIn, even, like, if you're on this call, you don't have a LinkedIn, that is your homework. Get a LinkedIn. If you had a LinkedIn, you haven't looked at it in 5 years, this is your sign to go update it, because you are missing out. So I just want to talk a little bit about how to leverage those kinds of tools like LinkedIn and Facebook groups and even social media to network. Like, what does that look like outside of like walking up to someone and talking to them?
I guess, like, if I want to put it in its most simplest form, like calling Sarene really to ask about one thing, but spending 20 minutes talking about something else, I consider that networking too, because we find common interests. In that time, we figure out, oh, we might know the same people, or maybe I need something and she knows that person. So I think it's like, I'm shy by nature. I'm introverted by nature. So is Sarene. That's why we bond. And I think that really helps us open up when we're just able to have just a conversation. So that, I guess that's what it looks like when you're networking with people you work with. But outside of people that you work with, I guess it just goes back to that genuine curiosity thing. To Shari's point, have a LinkedIn. If you have the setting on your LinkedIn where people can see you when you check out pages, it's the best tool, because I've found people just by them creeping on my page and just saying like, oh, wow, like, they're interested in what I do. They, you know, it looks like they want to get there. And then when they message me, I already know who they are. Mm-hmm. So like, do that. Definitely just like check out people's pages, because they could see it. But yeah, outside of that, just doing this. And if you're shy, kind of just taking that chance to step outside your comfort zone, because I'm sure there's some inspirational quote for it. But like, if you just say like, I'm shy, I'm just going to stay within my bubble, like, how do you expect to meet people and go in different areas? You kind of just have to step outside your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm. And they also have on LinkedIn an open to work tag too. Like, LinkedIn has some really cool tools. Don't ask me how to do it. I don't know, but Google is your best friend. But it's a little tag that'll be on your profile picture that'll let people know that you're open to opportunities, that you're open to work. So that's another form of putting yourself out there, quote unquote. So that was great, Brittany. Thank you. So 11:51, we're good on time. So we are going to switch gears to Q&A. Like I said before, so Haley is going to be facilitating the Q&A, and how we're going to do this just to make sure it's most efficient, because I know it's 81 of us here today, and we want to make sure we get through as many questions as possible. PM her directly, private message her directly with your question right now. You can start doing that, and she will ask the panelists. And we're only doing this so we can make sure we get through as many questions as possible. So Haley Seppa, PM her directly, and she'll ask the panelists the questions. And while you're doing that, I'll just really quickly ask the question that someone asked earlier. They wanted to know, and I guess this will be for Lauren, what the difference between a VFX coordinator and a supervisor would be. Like what's the difference between those two roles? And then Haley, you can take it away after that.
So I guess the difference between coordinator and supervisor. So supervisor is the next level up. And right now we are still kind of setting things up, but my supervisor is on set. He basically, they come to him if they have questions about visual effects, like, hey, can we put this in the background? Is this something that we can make as a set extension? In Orville, it's like, hey, do you think we can have this creature in this space? Is there enough room? Like, is it going to work in the dynamics of the lighting? And he also communicates directly with the director. They have a lot of conversations on set to see what we can achieve and what we can't achieve. He goes on scouts. They take pictures, and we sit there and we imagine, hey, like, what can we do to make this, like, the other day we were at the beach, and it's like, hey, can we eliminate the city skyline, or can we envision putting more out there, more things out there? So he kind of handles the direct work when it comes to what we can and cannot do. And me as a coordinator, I basically talk between the vendors. I make sure shots come out the way that we want them to look. I do a lot of communicating with them on multiple ways of, like, emails. We use a system, like, which is basically Messenger, but it's called Slack. I also kind of make sure everything is tightly put together with the calendar, and we're on time and queue with our meetings. I make sure the Zooms are all set up. It's a lot of organization on my level, and he's kind of more so the person that supervises and make sure that everything that we can put into the show can be put into the show, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren.
Sure.
So our next question is, how easy is it to find work or your next gig once you're in the post-production world?
Oh, it's very easy. You make so many connections during the job that you're on. And as long as you're doing a good job and people are noticing that, like, it'll lead you to your next job. Because I always get so worried about my next job, and it gives me anxiety at times, but it's never failed. Like, as long as you're doing a good job and communicating with people and just being easy to work with, people will just refer you to your next job. So definitely make those strong connections, because it's just so important to do that.
And to add on to that too, I worked on the Orville with my supervisor there, and he enjoyed my workflow with him, and we worked really well together there. That so much so that he's like, hey, I want to take you on to the morning show with me. Would you come with me? So really put yourself out there and work hard. You never know. Like, I was also nervous, always thinking about, hey, when this gig wraps up, where do I go next? But if you work hard and you show that you're a hard worker and you really prove yourself, like, the people that you work with might take you along with them, and then they'll become your second family. So.
Yeah, and that's how I found my mentor, is like by doing that. Like, she took me to Arkansas with her to do True Detective, and like, I would have never even expected that. So it's just like, yeah, building those bonds, like Lauren said, like just having that friendship side almost, because they are kind of your second family.
That's amazing. So our next question actually goes to a part of that, and I love this question because it speaks to a different side of diversity, which is we had somebody who's on who has a film production degree, but is in their 50s and has Pro Tools experience, sound design, post. How would they enter, or what advice could you give around entering at a later age in life?
I think still going through the same process, to be honest with you. It's kind of twofold. I think it's going through the same process and understanding that you still have to connect in the same way that a post PA would coming out of college. It's, I tell my assistant all the time that going through the post PA route, there's so much knowledge to be learned. Like when you move up and you start managing and you start doing the works, you still have to understand the basics. So I think that's like my best suggestion. And again, still network and reach out to people who are in a position to help you get your start, because really, honestly, all it takes is just getting a start. And then once you're in, you just work really hard to stay and keep moving up, especially if you have the passion and the talent for it.
Great. Brittany, this question is directed for you specifically. You spoke about how you work with a creative team, and this human is just curious about what it is that you seek when you're looking for new creative talent.
Oh, see, well, it's a difficult thing to answer, because where I currently sit in my job, I watch, it's kind of like what I described. Like I watch projects, and then after that project, like my husband actually makes fun of me for it. Like as soon as the movie ends, I'm on my phone, like seeing who worked on it. And I just, if it's an editor, a lot of times I like reach out to their reps to see like, hey, I just want to have a general meeting with them, because I really enjoyed their project. A lot of times I met Susie as her agent reached out to us and said, we want to set up a general. So I chatted with her and just really talking to different people. And when the project comes around that I think like they would be a really good fit for, because I also want to understand, it's not just like because you have the skills to edit, editors, from what I understand, is they want to work on a project that they're passionate about and work on like the type of project that, piques their interest. So when something comes around, if I've met with enough people, I just reach out to the people who I think would enjoy that project. I guess that's probably as creative as it gets for me as far as like who I'm hiring. Outside of that, it's just the post team and visual effects. Eric, like Lauren mentioned, I work with him on Orville. And so when Morning Show came around, he was like one of the only people I even thought of, because I know his temperament would work well for the show and his creativity was like spot on, and he works like really well with others. So I guess the long answer, so I apologize, is that I like to pair people who are like the right fits for that project, like both temperament wise and creativity, because you want to always make sure you're working on something that like you want to wake up every day doing.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I'm actually the one who asked that question, and it was I guess I should have specified. I know this is very like post-production centered, but I'm very interested in like the development aspect, and I feel like a good understanding was that you can really enter that through any angle, post-production, pre-production. And I guess my question was a little bit more towards the that development stage of like what you seek for like new up and coming writers, because I know it is a lot of connections, but what is it when you give someone like I guess like a nobody a chance is what I meant.
So I guess my question for you is, are you asking more of like a creative executive route, or like you want to be a writer, showrunner, director?
Writer, showrunner. I just want to see a writer's room, collab, work with people,
Then I think I might want like Sarene and Lauren to take that one, because they can speak from like the opportunities and exposure you get like as a post PA on the show side.
Well, on the show side, with the exposure that you get as being a post PA, like you do get to like work with the creatives pretty closely, like more than you would expect, because they're sitting there, they're watching the cuts, and sometimes you can even sit there and watch the cuts with them, which is probably the coolest part of being a post PA, or just any job in post, is getting to hang out with them and just like seeing them work through notes and going through that whole process, I mean, you can't, it's like priceless. So that's like the best opportunity in that respect.
Yeah, and I think something that a lot of people don't say, and I know Serene, you'll agree with me. I think when creatives understand post, it makes them better creatives.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you have to understand what you're writing, right? Because a writer could write like, we're gonna take this love affair to Mars in 2027. But if you don't understand what that translates to in an edit bay, or for color, or for visual effects, and what that does to the process, it just makes you a creative writer. It doesn't help you on the back end. So even if like you get in as a post BA knowing you want to be a writer, like kill it as a post BA and learn everything you can and understand the process. Because when you go to make a movie or direct a movie or write a movie, it's going to make you a better writer. And same in the inverse. If you want to work in post and you're in the writer's room, like every part of the TV industry kind of feeds into where you ultimately want to be. It's just how you cater your time in that position.
And
I'm
editorial.
also gonna, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say editorial is another form of writing. It's a different way of writing it. So
I would say too, whatever show you end up on, definitely do your research and watch the show all the way through. See if there's anything you can find online. Do your research, read the scripts. That absolutely helps for you to be able to understand the story and how and what direction it may go in. That's very essential for if you want to be a writer as well.
Thank you all very much. This is I appreciate it.
Yeah, all right. Well, that dovetails nicely into the next piece here, which is what skills should folks know and have before looking for their first production PA job? And what are good things to include on the resume? What are good things, experiences, etc.? Is volunteer a thing that is helpful? Anything, any advice that you have on that realm?
honestly, I know this is gonna sound weird. It doesn't really matter, I feel like, what you have on your resume, because it matters more how you are in person and how easy you are to work with. Like, yes, like it looks good. Like if you have a college degree, that's great. Like, I think having that is like definitely a prereq that you would need. But it's just more about how you are in person. I mean, like I said, I got my first job. I went to go interview thinking I was doing a production assistant, like on set job. And I ended up, it was a post job. So, and she just hired me because I did a walk across Spain. I mean, it's just like more about how you connect with people when you're trying to get a PA job, because you just need to be able to like work with everyone and serve everyone that you're working for in the best way possible and just getting it done.
Yeah, and I know the question was about skills, but off of Serene's point with resumes, I think it's really important for post PAs, like when you're putting together your resume to present, not to pack it with random positions, because they're not looking, like when you're applying for a post PA gig, they're not looking for a full resume. They're looking for skills that are applicable or roles that were applicable. So if you did like college films, or you were a producer on a project you did in college, or you volunteered, or you intern, like they want to see transferable skills, and not that like you were a barista, or like in my case, I was like a barista and I worked for like my college newspaper or something like that. Like I put the college newspaper, even though there was a big white gap, but I just put everything that was applicable. So I think that's like definitely what I tell everybody, like who puts in a post PA, just don't try to pack it, just put in things that like are transferable, and information like Serene mentioned, where she did a walk across Spain, like things that make you interesting, that like could spark a conversation with someone, because you never know what it'll lead to. And put your college down at the bottom, not at the top.
Great advice. For the three of you, what made you choose, the more television oriented routes over feature films in that realm? I know there's a little bit of crossover now. It's a weird industry now. There's a lot of what is TV, what is film, but it seems like all three of you are working primarily in the TV realm at the moment. So curious about that.
For my position in film, my position is not very relevant because in film, it's more of the director and editor, and that's their domain. There really is no post-producer role that's effective. In TV, it is a lot more effective. And I kind of do just like the episodic momentum of that. Like instead of being on a film, which is also super cool, but doing that for about a year, like this has more chaos in TV. And I like that a lot. So
Touching on that too, like I remember learning in college, they'd say, if you paint, if they tell you to paint a room and you're working on a film, you can take a lot longer to do that. But if you're working in TV and they tell you to paint a room, then you have to do it like then and there because it is a lot more chaotic. There is a lot more deadlines, like things are a lot more faster paced and quicker in the television industry. And that's also something I really like about it. Things move very quickly around here, and also like that episodic feel and finishing like one episode is such an accomplishment. And then it's like, okay, great, let's move on to the next one. And then something else falls out of episode one and you have to go back and then you finish and it's like, okay, now it's for real done. But the episodic feel is different than creating a feature, and it is faster paced in TV.
Yeah, I feel like in features, when they say final, they mean final. I feel like nothing's ever final in TV. And it probably says a lot about us that we prefer the chaos as opposed to the the slow pace. Because I did 2 feature films as in post, and then I've done TV. Man, I prefer TV over features because I feel like features are so slow, it gives me more time to mess up. Whereas like TV, you have to be on it.
With that, I mean, we're here on a Saturday because y'all work all week long. You're doing incredibly long hours all of the time. How do you maintain work-life balance? How do you do self-care? What does that look like?
Serene, when you figure it out, let me know because I'm still trying to figure it out.
kind of take it when you can get it. Like if I see a lull in my emails, I'll like go and like take care of myself. But it is, you are kind of on call in my position a lot. And that is really hard. It is trying, like it tests you a lot. You know, you have different people coming at you, especially if you're working on a show in a different time zone. I was working on a show in Australia and I was here in California, and I mean, they're like 16 hours ahead of us. So we were on call all the time. So you kind of just grab those pockets when you can, like you'll feel them out in that rhythm of your workday. And you like grab an hour for yourself. And then usually like, I feel like Brittany on our show, like after 7, sometimes things start to die down. So it's like, you know, you turn your phone off, you leave it in your room, or you just find a way to break away. And then weekends you have like I just don't look at my emails on the weekends at all. That's my balance.
Nope. Even opening I'm on my work laptop right now, and even opening out my work laptop on a Saturday gave me anxiety. Like I don't even look at it on Saturday and Sunday. I think to Serene's point too, because like both Lauren and I have been in the industry for a bit. Once you kind of get to that place as far as work-life balance, I think when you come in as a post PA, you just have to go in with the mindset of like, I'm just going to work really hard to move up. And I think once you move up, it's being selective with the projects you take, or the company that you work for, the boss that you work under, and understanding, making sure they understand work-life balance, so that if you get to a point where like you're overwhelmed, you could say to your boss, like, hey, I just need an hour, or do you mind if I get off early at this time? I have this to take care of. And if you're a hard worker, then it shouldn't be a problem them saying yes. And also just in the space that we're living in, as far as everyone being hybrid right now, that is super helpful. Being able to take a meeting, and maybe you're not on Zoom, maybe you're not on video or audio, and you're just listening, and you can make your lunch while you're listening to a meeting. I feel like that, you know, finding pockets of time in your day where you can do stuff like that goes a long way for sure.
So helpful to hear. So we have a lot of students who are looking for entry-level jobs and things like that, and they're finding a lot of pushback into needing to have 2 to 5 years experience on their resume and things like that. Are there production houses or studios or places that you know that are open to looking at students who don't have, or recent grads who don't have that amount of experience yet?
I think that kind of goes back to what Lauren and Brittany were saying about like making that like personal direct connection. And that's where that helps. Because yeah, obviously, like if you're applying for a PA job, you're not going to have 2 to 5 years of experience. Like that's very common. So I think there isn't like a specific production company or studio that's like a go-to, because obviously then it wouldn't be a go-to. But just that's when you would do it, like what they were saying, is just make that direct connection, like stand out from the crowd, make yourself like have a presence to that person. That's the best way to deal with that, I would think. I'm sure you guys also have like good advice for that too.
Yeah, I think to jump off what you're saying, Sarene, it's, I think, just having no ego and realizing that like no job is too small for you. If say you take it, and I don't know if this was Lauren's reality, but like to her example, let's say she wanted to work on the Orville and she wanted to be in post, but there was no position, but there was a payroll accountant position on the show. Take the payroll position, because you never know who you're going to meet. And she's a VFX coordinator now on like one of Apple's biggest shows. So it's like, no role should be underneath you. I feel like I meet a lot of people who think like when they graduate college, they have to go right into where they want to be. And I would actually say that's probably the wrong thing that you should do. I think you should you have time. If you have time, I should say, try and work the opportunities around where you want to be, because when you end up at that higher place, whether that's a post exec or a post producer or a VFX supervisor, you have a better understanding of everything it takes to make your job run smoothly. It makes you a better manager. It makes you a better person in that position. I'm just a huge proponent for just like having no ego and, you know, obviously accept the job that's going to allow you to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. But also understand that if like you're new to the industry and you're still growing, there are going to have to be sacrifices that you make, and put your ego aside just to get you to where you're ultimately going to be.
And to add to that too, like, even though I was in accounting, it gave me a better and bigger picture of like why the things are the way they are in the show, like why we spend the amount of money that we did on certain things. It's honestly a better thing to try and do, because then you just understand more about the show and the whys. I highly recommend just kind of like going out there and trying new things. Even if it's not your direct path, if there's doors open, you should definitely walk through them.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like I remember when I was a post PA, my current mentor, like this is like 8 years ago, was like, I'm going to make you the VFX coordinator. And I was like, don't do that. That's terrifying. I'm going to mess everything up. Like you can't like make me a VFX coordinator. And it was honestly the best thing she ever did for me. Like, even though that's not what I wanted to do, that experience has helped me till this day. So yeah, every avenue should be open. Never like say no to any different thing, even if it's scary, because I was terrified. But yeah, just be open to everything that's offered to you.
Yeah, I hope you're taking notes, because these are gold nuggets of advice coming through. So we have 2 more questions before we wrap. And the first is, do you have a particularly favorite moment, as well as a very challenging moment from what you've done in your career so far? And what are they?
Credits are challenging. That's actually the hardest part of my job. Is credits. So if you ever encounter them and you're working on a show, start them from the first day that you start shooting and track every single person that is on that call sheet. and you'll be fine, hopefully. But yes, credits are the hardest thing just because of all the legal and contractual and placement and all the notes, tracking all those. It's I've had dreams about credits. But yeah, my favorite moment was going to, I got to go to Arkansas for True Detective, and we spent like 8 months out there, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Like, it was just like a whole family, like we're all there. There was no infrastructure. We were working out of a candle shop. Like, it was like so cool. And like those kinds of experiences are the best. It's like the best part of doing this job.
I'd say deadlines are definitely difficult, especially when there's a lot of load on the plate and you've got to look at, there have been days with the Orville where we've had to look at like 200 shots in a day, and we would sit there for hours and just review and make sure everything's good to go, and we pump them out, and then while we're reviewing, more shots come in. So just trying to stay on top of stuff when things get hot. And then I guess my favorite part of my journey so far, and this is kind of a personal experience, but I think it was my last day on the Orville, and we were sitting in with a review with Seth MacFarlane, and he goes, "Hey, so Lauren, it's your last day here." And I'm sitting there like, "Oh, that's cool. Seth's talking to me." And he's like, "Hey, like, thanks for all your hard work. Like, can't wait to win an Emmy for the show. We're all gonna be there. It's gonna be an amazing time." And like that just made it so worth all of the hardcore stuff I've had to go through just to get to where I am today. So super awesome experience.
I guess specific to me, since I'm in a managerial role, I'm an empath. So I think the hardest days for me, honestly, are when my team, like on the show, when they're struggling, when they're going through difficult times, when they're feeling like they're not being supportive supported, and that there's a lot like piling up on them. Those are really difficult days for me, just as a manager, because I want to make sure people are happy and that they're feeling good and that they're feeling supported. So those are honestly my hardest days. But I have two, my best experiences. It's kind of what Lauren said is, you know, like when you grow up watching certain people on TV, like I'm a huge Beyonce fan, and she was in this movie called Obsessed with Ali Larter, and I worked on a show with Ali Larter in 2016. And she at first was super intimidating, and by the end of the show, her and I were like best friends by the end. And like to a point where there was one day she was trying to get off set early, and she was just like, "When they yell cut, I'm going to say I have an illness and you have to drive me to my trailer, and you are going to help me pregame for a party, and we're going to drink a bottle of Vouv." And it was like one of the most like rewarding times ever. And I was like 24, like a set PA. It was like 2 a.m. And I thought that was like a really cool experience where it's like, these are the kind of things that people don't talk about. And the second one is, I don't even know if Sarene knows this, but Sarene worked on Pachinko with me last year. And Pachinko in like 2016 was one of Obama's like top 3. You know how he does that like favorite book of the year type thing? And Pachinko was one of them. So the president of his production company reached out and he wanted to see the show before it aired. And our president of TV like called me on my cell. I thought I was in trouble. And she was like, "Can you send Pachinko to the president?" And I was like, "Which president?" And she was just like, 44, Obama. And I was like, "Gladly." So like I got to get his like personal email address, and I had to sign like 4 NDAs and send him the whole episode. That was really cool. And I can say that now because the show's out. But at the time it was like really cool and like rewarding, because that was a very, very difficult show. If anyone has ever seen it. So that was like really rewarding at the end of all of that, to be able to like hand it to him, and he watched it. So because I could see who watches it.
Yeah.
Did he respond to you?
No. And I put my name and my email and my number, hoping he would run into issues so he would call me, but I guess he knows how to work picks.
So close.
I know, close. But you know what? He has my name. So
it's a big deal. That's
yeah.
all of these are such great experiences to share. I really appreciate that. On our last point, how we usually wrap this up is, are there resources, networking groups, things that you can recommend for folks to check out, and either talk about them, type them in the chat, whatever works for you. And if there's like one that you can mention in particular, it can be in any realm of what you're doing.
I guess just like the Facebook groups, like Lauren and Brittany had mentioned earlier. Never get discouraged too much. Like just keep on at it, because like if you follow up with someone, that gives you like a 30% chance higher than just emailing them like one time. Like make it a personable reach out. Don't make it like an obvious, like this is my template, I plugged in your name. Like if you make it personable and you, like people remember that. So do that. In terms of like an actual platform, besides Facebook, I mean, because that's what I used. I don't have one, but also going on to the local 700, the editorial union, and then just anyone you know, like anyone you know that's even kind of in the industry, just reach out to them. Like people are always willing to help anyone. Like, I mean, I do that till this day. So do that. And then also just the side note is, if you ever like get fired in our industry too, which could happen, never, like, it doesn't matter. It's okay. Like people get fired for things that like, that should never discourage you either. It's usually like creative differences. So it's not like a corporate job where you get fired and then you're like blacklisted. Like it's never looked at like that. So it's okay to get fired sometimes. But anyways, that's just my closing statement.
Just looking at Facebook right now, because I pulled it up, I have a bunch of those pages on here. There's stuff like, and I don't know if y'all want to write it down, but there's stuff like International Women Working in Film, Find a Production Assistant Los Angeles, LA County SoCal Production Assistant Needed, Paid Film TV Production Jobs. Like these are just some of the pages I'm in currently on Facebook. And then like, if you want to kind of go through the switchback route, there's also a page called emilyrice.com, and that's through accountants. But again, like through different paths, you can make connections. And for some reason, accountants are always needed. Clerks are always needed on TV shows. It's for one of the reasons, it's just one of the things that they always need people in. And that's absolutely a huge way to make a step in the right direction. And it might not be the path you want at first, but once you get there, you can make your connections and move up through there.
To Lauren's point, there's currently a shortage in accountants, actually in TV accountants. So if you want to learn it, definitely do that. Lauren, that was a good idea. I pulled it up too, just to see if I could supplement any Facebook groups. There's some like post-production / editing jobs. That one's public. And there's some private groups where you have to answer some questions to get in, but I need a post super coordinator, AEPA, women in post. I need a post super coordinator. There's a blue collar post collective that's public. Honestly, if you go into Facebook and type in post-production, they'll all pop up. And they'll say if they're public or private. Just go in there, and some people are looking for PAs, and they literally put the email address that it has to go to. So send an email there. Not that I'm offering this up for Lauren and Sarene, but like if you guys like reach out to your admins for this group and ask for my email address, you can reach out to me and send your resume and let me know like what you're interested in. Even if like maybe you want to talk to people, maybe I can connect you to the right person. Self-admittedly, because of my job, I am terrible on email, but I try my hardest to respond swiftly. I really do try, but don't be discouraged to reach out to me for sure. And just like, let me know where you're at in your career and what you're interested in. I'm always happy to try and help or put you in touch with the right person. I just got our temp PA a job at Sony recently. So I write a really good letter of recommendation. So just let me know.
That's amazing. this recording will be available in the next week or two on our on-demand page. So if you need to go back and look up those Facebook groups, it will be available for you to go back through, as well as their amazing piece of advice. Sarene, Lauren, Brittany, thank you so much for this today. This is so huge and such a great opportunity for our students and for faculty and everybody who's in and listening. And we really, really, really appreciate your time. I'm getting a lot of comments also in the direct message saying thank you and all of that. So please know that it's very valued and it's really, we're so grateful. And on that note, y'all, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your weekend. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here.